Hi, hey Russ here. Welcome back to the shop. Today I want to talk about skewer joints. Now, if you live in America, you know what a skewer is. It's you put your meat and your vegetables on here. You can take this on and off the grill then with them on there. The ones we're going to talk about are bamboo skewers. You can buy them at a grocery store here in America. They're in almost every grocery store out there. So they're easy to buy and they're very cheap. But actually, believe it or not, this has got to be one of the strongest little dowels. Pound for pound, inch for inch. These are really strong for joinery. So what are we talking about? What is a skewer joint? That's a skewer joint. This is just two pieces of wood that I glued together. And I glued three pieces together yesterday. And we'll get into those completely in a minute. But this is just a butt joint. End grain to long grain joint. Not a very strong joint normally. But I put these little tiny dowels in there. I actually only have two dowels in it. That third one was a failure. And we'll talk about why that failed in a moment. But with just two dowels in here, there ain't no way that joint shouldn't have pulled apart if it was just a butt joint with glue only. And it actually, I think it's a pretty strong joint. I don't know how strong it is yet because I haven't tried to break it. But I think before we're done here, we're going to try to break these joints. I got three of them I glued up. This one on regular hardwood with two dowels in it. This is a piece of 1/2-inch plywood. And I put three dowels in it. Again, just a butt joint. And you would think, again, you know how weak this joint is on plywood. But actually, that joint is actually pretty strong too. So, and I made a third one. And this is just a miter joint, classic box joint type of thing. And instead of putting curves across it, splines, what I did was I actually took and drilled the hole through it this way. And then I just put the skewers in there and cut them off and sanded them down. I have three of them in there. And this being the small, that joint it is, actually, that joint's pretty strong too for a miter joint. So, first thing we want to do is let's talk about the bamboo skewers. Inherently, one thing you should know about bamboo skewers is that because it's bamboo, bamboo is always a stringy type of wood. If I take this one and I bend it, you can kind of see the strand right here in the middle. You can see the strand breaking off. Instead of breaking straight across, this thing breaks into a bunch of strands and they all break off individually and you get this mohair look of strings at the end when it finally does break. And so you have to keep that in mind when you're using these. But that's what gives it its strength. In the same way a piece of rope is strong from little tiny pieces of string when you bring them all together. So, but to use them, there's a couple little things you need to be careful of. If you're going to make a joint using them, and what I like about them is that they are actually very low view. You just really can't even hardly see them unless you really look. It doesn't give you much different hole than what you would get if you put a brad nail in there and then filled the hole in with wood putty. You end up with about the same type of size hole. But there's no wood in this, and there's no metal in this at all. And that's what I like about it. So, inherently, first thing you got to do is the hole size is really critical. Like I was telling you that on this one, you can see three of them in there, but two of them went in, and the third one was a failure. And the reason it was a failure is that when I drilled the hole into my wood, the diameter of your bit is extremely critical. You got to mic your bamboo skewer, and this is exactly the same size as this. So when I drill my hole, I can just put it in there. And I drill the hole to that exact size. Now I can take my skewer and fit it in the hole, and you'll see that it's kind of rubbing, but it actually can go all the way in the hole, and it bottoms out. So it actually is a loose fit for a dowel, but that's okay because bamboo will actually swell up quite a bit from the wood glue. And in order to put the dowel in, what you have to do is you take your wood glue, and I try to use a little tiny hole piece of glue because getting it down in that hole is kind of a challenge. And I take and I squeeze a little bit of glue down in the hole. Then you put a little bit of glue on the very end of your skew and put a little bit of glue on there. Now you take your dowel and put it down into that hole where that glue is and turn it, spin it as you put it down in the hole to kind of smear the glue around. When you pull it back out, all that glue that is built up around the outer edge gets sucked down in there as you're pulling this out. So now when I put it back in and I spin it as I go in, it's pretty much seated and you get a little bit of glue out coming out of it. And then all you have to do is when you're sure you're bottomed out, take something that you can cut it with and just cut it. Don't try to cut it with a saw or anything at this point. And just cut it off like with a pair of wire cutters or something. And now I cut it off. Now, because this is real stringy, this glue, this end of this thing is actually kind of, all these strands are kind of loose. So trying to stick this in the next hole, these things will try not to go into the hole very well. So in order to use this, on this end that I just cut off, usually there's enough glue around my joint to do it there. But what you want to do is put a spot of glue on the end and just kind of wipe it around the very end of the glue and then pull all the glue off at the end. And that's enough to bind it back together. And then in about 2 minutes this will be fine to put into another hole. Then I can reuse this. All I have to do is re-drill my hole and put my glue in. Put a little glue on it. Stick it down in the hole. And twist it as you go in until you get it bottomed out. And then, like I said, I tried to pull it out once to get the glue really surely that's on all of it. And now I got it in, I can feel that thing is actually already snugging up. Cut it off. Take the excess glue and put a tiny bit on the end. And by the time you're ready to use this again, that'll be ready to put into the next hole. Yes, somebody's mowing. So anyway, after it dries, then just wipe all the excess glue off, and after it dries, just take a flush cut and cut them off flush. Clean it up. And now you have a dowel that has been put in there. I just put these two in, and they actually are pretty good. And that actually increases the strength of the joint then immensely. So that's how easy it is to put in there. You have to be careful. Don't forget to put a little glue on the end of this when you're done, and pull the glue off by pulling it off the end, so that then it will tend to stick back together. So when you try to stick it in a hole, they aren't going to try to spread and come out instead of go into the hole. So make sure you fix the end so it's ready for the next time. I also tend, this is one end of these are always a point. I kind of tend to keep a couple, 3 of these around. And the reason that is that instead of a tiny little 1/8 inch hole, just for grins, let's put a 1/4 inch hole in here. Now, with a 1/4 inch hole, now we're going to take a bunch of small dowels. Let's put some glue in the hole. And start putting these in there one at a time, in and out, spread them around. And this size in particular will probably take either 2 or 3 of these. And now the third one, I'm going to put in there with the point first. So now I put that in there. Cut that one off. Let's put this one in there. And let's put this third one in place. And now we let that dry. And then cut it off flush. Should have waited for it to dry, but that's hard to do when you don't edit videos. And now, what I have now is a 1/4 inch dowel hole. So that one is even going to be stronger than these little ones. So if I really want to double up on them, I can do that too. Put a whole bunch of them in one little hole and then smash them down in there with glue. When you clean it up, you just end up with a hole. And a lot of times this hole will not look like nice and round hole. It'll actually more blend into what you have. So it's a good way to hide your dowels a little bit, is to have them actually smashed down. But more than anything, it's a bigger dowel in there now. So you're going to get even more strength out of that than you do out of this one. So you can do it that way, or you can just put a bunch of little holes and put them all into it. It's really up to you how you want to do it, but you can use multiple bamboo skewers in the single hole if you want to. So 2 methods of which to use it. The other thing you have to keep in mind is that when you're done and you've cut it, because these things are stringy, it'll try to pull apart on the end that you just cut. And that makes it difficult to put it in the hole next time. So what I do is when I first put it down in the hole and I cut it off, when I have this end here, I just take a little bit of glue and smear it on the end and get it wet with glue. And I just kind of smear it around. Then I pull the glue off by pulling to the end. And that pulls all the strands down tight on the end. In about 2 or 3 minutes, that glue will dry enough that those strands will stay together so that you can put it into the next hole and use the end of this. So as I go along, once I cut one of these skewers off, I always glue a little bit on the end just to keep it from the strands pulling apart where you can't use it. Because if you got it all stringy on the end, then you have to cut it off in order just to get it into the hole. So remember, it's very critical, the size of the hole, and it's very critical that you get enough glue down in that hole. So if you use this method I just used, that you should be able to do the same thing I just did. So that's a skewer joint. So let's take a look at this real quick, just for grin. Let's see if we can break these joints. So I'm going to start with this one. Since it's the biggest, it should be the easiest to break. And let's see what it's going to take to break this joint. So I'm going to just set it here, and we're just going to whack it and see. There. Boy, that took a hell of a whack. And actually, it didn't even break. I could probably glue that and put that right back together if I really wanted to, I suspect. So, but as you can see, that for a miter joint with glue, that actually was pretty strong. Is it the strongest joint out there? Nah, but that's probably more than strong enough for whatever that joint would be used for. You don't have to have the strongest joint in the world every time. So what about this one? Again, it takes a heck of a whop to break it. So I think this is actually going to be a very good joint. Can we break this one? I don't know. I'm not sure how I'm going to break this one. I don't think we can. There we go. And now we broke all three. You think that's a little stronger than a normal butt joint glue joint? I think it is. Skewers. They're handy to have in the shop, and anytime you want to reinforce a joint to make it even stronger, this is a quick, easy way to take any joint, make it stronger without having to use screws to do it. And it only takes a few seconds to drill a hole, put some glue in it, put this in and cut it off, and you're good to go. So they're a quick, easy way to turn butt joints into very strong joints so that you can use them. I hope you learned something here today. I like the thought that these actually are going to be pretty handy to have around the shop, and I'm going to start buying these and keeping a lot of them in the shop. I just see so many places where I can take a couple minutes and add a quick couple of dowels, mini dowels, and make that joint so that I can use that piece, that joint, and not worry about it coming apart. Pretty quick and easy. Hopefully you did learn something. If you like this video or you did learn something, hit that like button. That always helps out. I do want to thank you for stopping by, but most importantly, come back again because we'll know when you're done. Thanks, and we'll see you again very soon.